Hi everyone, my name's Chris Williamson. I'm a lecturer in polar microbiology in the School of Geographical Sciences, and I'm going to be talking to you today about some of my research and how it links with a teaching program at Bristol. And this is all to do with life in the extremes of our planet. So if we think about our Earth system, which is made up of different spheres, two of the spheres that my research is concerned with is the kind of interplay between the cryosphere, which is all of the frozen components of our world, so things like glaciers and ice sheets or snowpacks, and the biosphere, which is the living components of our world. And what I want to talk to you today about is about life that lives on the surfaces of glaciers and ice sheets. So this is a superglacial environment, and how it interrelates and how it impacts larger scale processes. And specifically today, we're going to talk about the Greenland ice sheet. So here you can see a couple of examples of life that's found on the surface of glaciers and ice sheets, and both of these are examples of microalgae. So within these systems, we don't get big, complex, you know, plant life or animal life. These are microbially dominated systems because they're cold and there's less energy available for life, but they are still active and diverse and inhabited by a range of organisms. And at the bottom of the food chain, the primary producers in these systems are microalgae, so microscopic photosynthesizing single cell organisms. So the top right here, we've got a snow algae, and this is a particular species that has red cysts. And when you get a big bloom of these, causes big red snowpacks that are often referred to as watermelon snow. And at the bottom left here, we've got an example of glacier algae or ice algae. So rather than living in snow, these guys live in the surface ice of glaciers and ice sheets. So during the summer melt seasons, when the snowpack melts away and the surface of the glacier is exposed, these guys can then grow within that surface ice. And they often cause the ice to look quite dark, or sometimes we call it dirty ice. It's because of a specialist pigment that they produce. And because we're part of the geography department, when we're thinking about this life and life that we find in these extreme cryo environments, we also are thinking more in terms of not just the biology of the organisms, not just how they're able to survive in these systems, but understanding the importance of this life for wider ice sheet processes. And what we're going to talk about today quickly is the Greenland ice sheet, which you can see here on the left, the second largest body of ice in the world, very important in terms of regulating our climate, for example, through albedo feedbacks, and also very important for sea level rise. So as the ice sheet melts, it contributes to sea level rise. And as we can see on the right here, we have a plot of what's called the mass balance of the Greenland ice sheet. And the zero line's back here. So if the mass balance is zero, it means that the ice sheet year on year isn't growing and isn't losing mass. But as the red line, the mass balance becomes negative, that means that the ice sheet is losing mass year on year. And as you can see, since the early 1990s, the Greenland ice sheet has been losing mass at an accelerating rate, which means it's contributing more to sea level rise, which is one of the biggest threats faced by the world with climate change. And some of the research I work on is understanding how the life that lives on the surface of the glaciers and surface of the Greenland ice sheet can contribute to this melt and drive this increasing loss of mass year on year. So how do we study that life? Well, just briefly, I wanted to show you a couple of images of how we go and study life in the cryosphere. So this is an image that we took with a drone of one of our ice camps that we've set up over the past few years on the Greenland ice sheet, southwest Greenland, where we'll set up an ice camp. We've got a big mess tent, and we have a big laboratory tent and some personal tents. We'll set up these camps and we'll go and stay there for maybe 4 to 6 weeks, and we'll study the life that's living in this surface ice. And actually all of the dark coloration that you can see in this image is caused by these ice algae, by a big bloom of these ice algae during the summer melt season. And when we're on the ice sheet, there are many different things we can do to look at this ice. A lot of it involves sampling or recording different parameters. So this is a picture of me doing some coring of the surface ice. So this is before the snow has melted away, and we're coring down to see whether there are any microbes living there before the melt has really started, to give us an idea of how these systems function at the end of the winter period and the start of the melt season. We can install sensors where we're monitoring things like light and temperature, liquid water within the snowpack. This is a student, PhD student, digging a snow pit, and she's then taking that snow and melting it so that when she takes the samples back to Bristol, she can measure the nutrient concentrations and get an idea about how much nutrients are available in the system for life, and how they're cycled, how they change over time. Other things that we do on the ice sheet, for example, if we want to link from these small point observations and we're thinking, how do we link up to wider ice sheet scale processes, and we need some sort of medium scale measurements. So we can use drone surveys for these. And this is a drone that we can deploy to take images of the ice surface and see how it evolves over time. And we can also do air sampling, for example. So this is an air filtration unit that can be filtering the air onto a filter and catching any potential microbial cells or other particles that are floating around or being blown around in the air, so we can understand how they're transported across the ice sheet at larger spatial scales. And sometimes life on the ice is very nice and sunny. This is a picture of our camp in northwest Greenland a couple of years ago. Lots of fresh snow, but quite nice conditions to work in. And other times it is not, and it's quite cold and snowy as well. But it's these kind of changes in the environmental conditions that we're trying to understand how the life that lives there adapts to them, and how that regulates that life, and in turn how that regulates the impact of the life on the ice sheet. So to come back to the science question then, we were talking about the melt of the ice sheet and potentially whether life in surface ice can impact that melt. And the short answer is that absolutely yes, it can. So even though the algae, for example, this is an image of the glacier algae I was talking about, or ice algae that live in the surface of the ice, even though these are microscopic cells that we need a microscope to view, they are able to impact overall the melt of the Greenland ice sheet. And the way that they can do that, the research we've done has shown, is because they produce this very specialist dark pigment, so sort of browny purpley pigment you can see in the cells here. The reason they produce this is because obviously the glacial environment is a very high light environment, and so they need to protect their cells from the UV radiation and the high light that they're receiving every day during the summer season. Just like we would when we go out on the ice sheet, we need to put on lots and lots of sun cream because otherwise we burn very quickly. So these guys produce this specialist pigment, which is a UV absorbing pigment, and it protects their cells from this high UV, high visible light radiation. But at the same time, it serves as a really special mechanism for the cells because they live in an icy environment where liquid water is limiting, and they need to generate liquid water around their cells somehow, because liquid water is required for life. It also contains dissolved nutrients they need access to. So by capturing the sun's energy with this specialist pigment, that energy is then available to the cells to melt ice around the cell and to create the conditions that the cells want in order to survive. Unfortunately for the ice sheet, what that means is that these guys are very, very effective at capturing the sun's energy and turning it into meltwater generation, so that at the larger spatial scale, this can have quite significant impacts on the overall melt of the Greenland ice sheet. And just how significant is something that we've spent a lot of effort trying to understand over the past few years. We've done a lot of work in southwest Greenland, and if we work up from the microscopic scale here, so if you look down at the microscope at a surface ice sample, you can see these glacier algal communities. Then when we're stood on the ice surface, this dark coloration, browny purpley coloration that you can see on the ice is caused by blooms of these microscopic algae. And then at the regional scale, this is a satellite image of this small portion of southwest Greenland from the edge of the ice sheet on the left into the interior on the right. The interior doesn't melt even during summer times, but in this melt zone, the ablation zone, we have this really dark band that we can see, and we call this the dark zone. It runs all the way down the western margin of the ice sheet, and this is caused mainly by blooms of these microscopic algae. And this darkening means that the energy, more energy is being absorbed in this region, which is producing more melt. And we estimate that these glacier algal blooms can contribute an additional 10% of melt every year in this region of the ice sheet. So they're really important in terms of melt generation in southwest Greenland. So then thinking about geography at the University of Bristol and the course that we offer, Obviously, not every undergraduate will get to go to Greenland to do work and to learn about these dynamics. But the research that we're doing there does inform quite a lot of the course content and some of the fieldwork that we do typically offer during the course. So, for example, during the first year of the geography degree, you would undertake a module called Key Concepts in Human and Physical Geography, where you'd be taught, part of that unit is taught about the cryosphere and about the biosphere, so you'll learn the foundation about some of these dynamics. In year 2, we run a module called Fundamentals of Modern Glaciology, where again you'll learn about the physical glacial processes, about hydrochemistry processes, and about the microbiology. And also in year 2, we run this nice field course to Arolla in Switzerland in the Alps, which is a really good kind of relatively local example of a glaciated region that we can go to and demonstrate some of the principles and some of the techniques that we've been teaching during the lectures. So we go and do roughly a week's field course, and we stay in this lovely hotel. And during the week, you undertake a series of different activities that are taught by the academic staff. So linked with what we've been talking about today, one of them is glacial hydrochemistry. So learning how to measure different characteristics of the water, the meltwater that's coming off glaciers, such as the pH, the EC, nutrients. So these are some students that have been filtering water, which they're going to take back to a small field lab that we set up to measure the nutrient concentrations in there. And this is all about understanding where this water is coming from and what biogeochemical cycles are taking place in it. And also we do some glacial microbiology, so looking at what life is in this system and how it's impacting the cycling of nutrients, for example. And these are some students doing some chlorophyll extractions of the algal life in the system, such as the algae we've been looking at today, and measuring nutrients and doing titrations to measure the carbonate chemistry. And then the last part, so there's other days on that field course as well, and the last part of the field course is running your own student project. So you set up your own group of maybe 4 or 5 students and come up with something that you'd like to research based on what you've been taught during the week, and then you have a couple of days to work in this glaciated region and to do some sampling and put together a nice report about the particular aspect that your group has been researching. Okay, so thank you very much. That's the end of the presentation, and hopefully you got a bit of an insight into some of the research and teaching on life in the extremes of our planet in the cryosphere and how this links to the program in geography. Thank you.